So we talked about Patrick Surtain a while ago in the big video where I broke down 4 cornerbacks in one video. I think it was called the cornerback question. If you've not checked that out, go check that out right now. It has film on Farley, Surtain, Kelvin Joseph, and J.C. Horn. My opinion has changed a little bit since that video, and we'll get into that as I get into my cornerback rankings. But today, I've been watching some Patrick Surtain, and I've come up with this theory. And it's a working theory, so it's not set in stone yet, but we're working on it, and we're trying to figure out what the theory, like what the potential is here. The big knock on Patrick Surtain, who's at the bottom of your screen here, is that his athleticism is not up to par, and it's not elite, and that is the big knock on him. And I would argue a little bit of the opposite. I would argue that while Patrick Surtain has average athleticism, which is by no means the best you want as a cornerback, I think the big reason why he kind of looks bad in some plays is because he looks uncomfortable and he looks out of position when he can't use his hands to put his hands on the receiver and feel the route out. Once he knows that, once he has his hands on the receiver, he looks a lot more natural in coverage versus when he doesn't and he's struggling. And let's take this early part. He's in press man coverage against this guy. And what he's going to do is he's going to run a simple little just stutter and his release and try and shake Patrick Surtain off. And watch how panicked Surtain gets. He kind of doesn't know what to do until he puts his hands on him and stays with him throughout the route. Let's check it out. So he's right here. We're going to see him kind of stutter outside, which pushes Surtain's hips outside. As you can see, Surtain has his foot. He took a step outside here, and his hips are kind of shifting outside. So this receiver is moving inside. Surtain doesn't have his hands on him, but you can see his hands about to strike, and that's exactly what happens, and he's able to turn his hips. And he's physical. I like that play because he's physical, but at the same time, look how natural he looks going out of that break. He knows the route, and he's going to stay right with him throughout that break. But if he didn't use his hands early on, I question what the result would have been. If he would have kept going outside and didn't punch as quick as he did right there, what would have the result have been? Would there be a step in space and separation from this guy to Surtain, or what? And that's what the main question that we're trying to answer here is. And this is just a little example. There's better plays throughout this Texas A&M game, but this is the first example that I really wanted to show of what Patrick Surtain does early on in the play to help him give him an advantage and try and figure out what the thing with Surtain is. Because when I watched Surtain before, I was just super unsure about him, and I didn't really know what was going on. And he's one of the harder prospects that I've ever had to watch to try and figure this out, and that's what I'm trying to do here. And when we talk about Patrick Surtain's athleticism, I think we need to get it out of the way real quick, and this play is one of the better examples to show it. He's going to be coming in on a blitz here. Watch how fast he comes from the numbers to the hash. I would just want to go through that. He accelerates. He starts out a little slow, but he's able to accelerate into Kellen Mond. That kind of just shows his speed. He's slow out of the break, but then once he gets about right here, he starts accelerating. I'll show that again as to not deposit. So we'll see him here. He's kind of slow, and then he accelerates and gets there a lot quicker than you would have expected. That's not elite speed. That's not like a Caleb Farley or a Kelvin Joseph type speed, but that's speed that can survive on the NFL level. And if you look at the elite defensive backs of the NFL, none of them are like Caleb Farley type athletics. They're kind of more Patrick Surtain size athletics. So I don't think that's the biggest knock on Patrick Surtain. I think it's more about him being uncomfortable when he doesn't get his hands on guys. Take this play, for example. Patrick Surtain's in zone coverage here, and he does a really good job of being instinctual and recognizing where his threat is, but he kind of overplays it. His feet seem a little bit hesitant at first, and let's just get into it, and I'll show you. Right off the bat, he kind of is hesitating. He doesn't really know what's going on. He's watching Kellen Mond because this reverse could be happening, and he might have to go forward, but he's kind of sitting here, and then he gets into his coverage, recognizes where his coverage threat is. It's right here, whether he's turning in or out. And then he kind of overextends, right? And he has to come back and shoot back out. And the steps here, I want to see how many steps he takes to move back to where he should be. So he's right here. That's 1, 2, 3-ish. I'd really rather that be 2. So once we get to the top of the route here, I'll get to it. right, he stops here one, and then flip this out, and then keep going downhill. And he kind of takes a little bit wasted movement there, pivots his back foot a little bit more than I'd like him to. It's kind of hard to see on tape, but I feel like that's just kind of where it's at, because he kind of takes that stutter step in the back right there. And he kind of shows to him being uncomfortable and a little hesitant. I don't know if it's just how he plays zone coverage or something, but he recognizes the play, and that's a really good job of recognizing the play. It's just, if he does, and then he gets his hands on the receiver, it's just he doesn't have his hands there, and he's kind of uncomfortable what route he's going, which is why he goes high. And then has to come down, which I guess is the right thing to do. And I'm not saying this is like more of a weakness. I'm just saying this is more of a thing that he does as a player. Right, take right here, for example. He's in coverage. He uses his hands to engage the receiver off the bat. And he kind of has to slow down right around here to make sure he knows what route this receiver is running. He's anticipating a break inside, which I think if Patrick Surtain had his hands on this receiver, he wouldn't be doing that. He'd be running in stride with him, and I'll show you what I mean here. So he doesn't use his hands. He's kind of a little bit off, but he's able to come back real quick. Do you see how he kind of like slows down and stutters right around the 5 to 7 yard marker right there? That kind of shows us that Patrick Surtain's anticipating a break inside and being able to flip his hips and get to the inside. Once that receiver doesn't do that, he knows he's going to be running a route upwards, which means he can use his natural speed. If Patrick Surtain used his hands earlier, I have a theory that he wouldn't have to slow down there and hesitate a little bit, and that might be where some of the parts is coming from, because he was kind of a step behind him until around right here. And that, I mean, just a little things. Like I said, it's not really a huge weakness for Surtain. It's just something to watch, and I wanted to break down on tape. And here's one of the best examples of this in the Texas A&M game that kind of shows it, and it turns into a block downfield. But the release and the stem here kind of shows that. And I'm just going to slow it down real quick to kind of be able to oh, that's subtitles, my bad. I'm going to slow it down real quick to kind of talk about it more in depth. Let's check out let's first watch what the receiver does. So he's going to come out on the snap, fake inside, and then plant, and then go back outside, and then come back inside. See how off kilter that puts Surtain? We're going to watch Surtain. So he goes outside a little bit, fakes inside as he sees this step come in. And then once he goes outside, Surtain moves all the way outside. He gets sold on the outside route, and then he has to come back inside and kind of put his hands on him to recover to that. And I think that's one of the better examples that I was talking about of Surtain being able to do this, and it turns into a block downfield. But when we watch Surtain here, he kind of moves outside, and he sells too far outside because this receiver seems like he's right on his toes and he didn't move his feet quick enough. And then has to move his arm to get better leverage and turn back inside. Which I think is kind of interesting, seeing how he looks almost uncomfortable doing this, especially against a receiver who has that good of a stem. And on the NFL level, you're going to see a lot of these guys, and I feel like Surtain's going to struggle as a rookie with this until he feels more comfortable playing without his hands, like in that sense. And I mean, this is kind of how this video originated, some of these plays, just like that. Here's another example. Surtain kind of looks hesitant here. Let's watch. Kind of like right at especially at the stem where this receiver's kind of just running up. Surtain looks super hesitant in how he looks. Like we're starting right here on the 30. What was that? 36. And usually routes kind of break out if it's a 36-yard route, kind of like right here. But Surtain's playing really safe within the first 3 yards of the stem, as if it's like a slant or something like that. But he has inside leverage, which kind of doesn't make sense as to why he's hesitating right there, because he can't go anywhere. This receiver can't go anywhere except for the sideline, which I don't understand why he's hesitating here. Again, it's difficult because Surtain can be inconsistent with this a little bit, but these are just a couple of examples where he doesn't get his hands on him and he's playing off a little bit. He looks uncomfortable, especially at the early goings of the route, trying to figure it out. And here's an example of Patrick Surtain knowing how to use his hands, and he anticipates the route. Watch it when this guy commotions and he's going to have to be on this guy inside. Surtain's going to come off, get his hands on him pretty quickly. He can feel the inside break already, but then watch how he adjusts to the route as it comes inside. It's almost flawless because he has his hands on this guy and he feels his hips and his upper body moving inside on this little kind of hitch or banana route. and gives him a little bit of pressure there. But I felt like this was a good example of Patrick Surtain using his hands, and I feel like if he does this on a daily, consistent basis, he's going to be a lot better. As opposed to the last play, we have this play here where this guy kind of gives him a little start. Surtain does a good job of staying patient and then coming up with him in the route, but he's a little slow in reacting to that. If he had his hands on him, I don't think that would be as slow because he would feel him going up. And then watch as this receiver makes a break outside. Watch how Surtain doesn't look as natural as he did before, right? There's kind of like that little second where he doesn't have his hands on him where he's like, oh, I need to go outside right there. As opposed to the last play where he had his hands on him and he felt it the whole way through. Surtain didn't necessarily have his hands on him the whole time and didn't really anticipate that break in the route. That's what I'm talking about. That's where I feel like Surtain uses his hands a little bit too much. Also, look how long Surtain has his eyes inside. This is a great indication. As long as Surtain is not using his hands and has his eyes on the receiver, we know that he doesn't know what route he's running. Once he feels comfortable with what route he's running, right when he breaks out this way, watch where Surtain's helmet's going to go. It's going to go back to the quarterback. Again, that's just a simple little nuanced technique thing that kind of tells where your mind is as a corner on tape, and that there, I feel like, proves what I'm trying to theorize here in this working theory. Right, again with this receiver right here, he's going to fake inside, which pulls Surtain's like entire body inside and then go outside. I don't feel like this would be this case if Surtain was able to be a little bit more physical in press man coverage here. Right, he pulls all the way inside, and his hips are good, and he recovers really well. That's what I like about Patrick Surtain, but that little part where he kind of misreads it and stuff could be a problem, especially against better receivers who know how to beat that. Right, we're going to move inside and then go outside. And that separation gives you enough time, if you're a really speedy guy, to get out, or if you're like a Julio Jones, to just get out and outman Patrick Surtain's physicality. Right, here's an example of what I was talking about with his hands. Watch how Patrick Surtain has his hands right on this guy's left shoulder, and when he goes outside and tries to face inside, Surtain follows it pretty closely because he has that hand, he's feeling it out, right there. When he doesn't have his hands, we see this receiver down here, 81, is able to kind of move with him and kind of give him some trouble. This guy over here, number 5, I think it is, he has his hand. When Patrick Surtain gets his hands on him, he struggles. Surtain does not struggle, like right here when he has his hands on him and he moves inside. Surtain anticipates that and is able to flip his hips inside while keeping his arms on him. He just looks a lot more comfortable, and whether that could be potentially be a speed thing, like just because he's holding on to him and he has a better control over the route, or whether that is the technique uncomfortable aspect of what we're talking about. I could be both. It could be one or the other. We don't know. And I felt that was a good example of him doing the exact opposite of what I've been talking about this film session, because he has his hands on him. So when we talk about Patrick Surtain, I mean, we've already talked about him before, and I kind of mentioned that in the cornerback question video about how he was a little unnatural at times. But this is the first opportunity I've really gotten to sit down and watch him and see why it is. And I think I've come to this conclusion that while his speed necessarily isn't great, it's not the thing that defines his traits. What defines his traits is his ability to get his hands on the receiver early enough to feel out the route. I think if he doesn't do that, he looks a little uncomfortable, especially in the early goings, especially in press man. He looks better in zone, just a little bit better, but as a whole, if he's press man on somebody, he needs to be a lot better as a player in terms of feeling out the route, and that just comes with time. He'll learn that on the NFL level, hopefully. But again, like I said, he's just going to need time, and he's going to need ability to be able to be a better fit in terms of putting his hands on guys and feeling out the route. That's one of the things that Darrelle Revis did really well, is being able to put his hands on guys and feel out routes. That's one of the things that Surtain does really well as well. He has the instincts, he has the natural technique in his game, the nuance in his game. I just think this is the one thing that kind of has him making uncomfortable decisions and ultimately kind of affects his speed at times, especially when he doesn't get his hands on the player at all. So that's just, I mean, it could be exploited by bigger NFL receivers, but for now it's not that big of a weakness, if it's a weakness at all. But yeah, that's how I feel about Patrick Surtain right now. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. We have a lot more videos coming out during April, and cornerback rankings are coming out probably later in the week. So stay tuned for those, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Peace out.